walked into the grand hall of the royal court. The floor was made of blue crystal that shone bright under the light. Walls rose high above her head, carved with strange symbols that told old stories. The air felt cold and heavy, and she could sense the eyes of everyone watching her every move. Was the human ambassador. This was her most important job ever. She had come to make peace between two worlds, Earth and had never talked before. Now they would. If did this right, humans could trade with and live in peace. If she did this wrong, her people would suffer. The royal guard stood in two long lines on either side of the hall. There were 30 guards in all. Each one was tall, almost 7 feet high. Their skin was blue and green, covered in scales that caught the light like mirrors. They had 4 eyes instead of 2, and their hands had sharp claws. These were the warriors who protected the royal family. They were strong and dangerous. Took a deep breath and walked forward. She wore a dark suit that showed respect for culture. Her hair was tied back neatly. Her face was calm and friendly, even though her heart beat fast. As she walked, something odd happened. The guards moved in their places. They shifted their weight from one foot to the other. Their breathing got heavier. She could hear the sound of their claws scraping on the stone floor. One guard's chest moved up and down very fast. Another guard made a low sound in his throat, almost like a growl. Tried not to show that she noticed. She kept walking. She kept her head up. Then she saw him. Commander stood in the middle of the back row of guards. His scales were a bright silver color, different from the dark blue of the other guards. He was taller than the rest, maybe 7.5 feet. His face was hard and cold like stone. He looked straight ahead and did not move at all, while all the other guards were watching with hungry eyes, showed nothing. A guard near gasped. His 4 eyes were wide open. His claws came out sharp and bright. He pulled his ceremonial spear so tight that his knuckles turned gray. He was shaking. Sweat ran down his blue skin. Another guard did the same thing, then another. They were getting worse, not better. Their breathing became harder. One guard looked like he might fall over. Another made a strange sound, something between a cry and a roar. Felt afraid now. She did not know what was wrong. She had done nothing but walk into the room. She wore nothing strange. She had done nothing to the guards, so why were they acting like this? Then something happened that made her feel better. Commander moved. It was a small move, just a small gesture with his hand, but it meant something. The guards that were shaking the most turned around, moved them to the back of the formation, away from. He did this without saying a word. He did this with quiet power. His eyes found for just a moment. She saw something there that the other guards did not have. They had fire in their eyes, hunger and confusion, but had clear eyes. He had control. He had knowledge. He knew what was happening to his men, and he was handling it. Prime Minister Dross stepped forward. He was older than the guards, with darker scales and wise eyes. He had ruled for 10 years. "Greetings, Ambassador," Dross said. His voice was deep and strong. "We welcome humanity to our world. We welcome you to our court." Turned to him and smiled. She had been trained for this moment. She had studied the language and customs for 2 years. She knew how to show respect. "The honor is mine," Prime Minister said. "My people come to you with open hands and honest hearts. We seek friendship between our worlds. We seek to understand your people." As she spoke, another guard fell to his knees. His breathing came in ragged bursts. His claws dug into the stone floor, leaving long scratches. Sweat covered his entire body. He looked like he was in pain. Commander moved again. He placed himself between and the guard on his knees. This simple move blocked the view, made it less clear to everyone watching. Looked down at the guard for just a second, and the guard got up on shaky legs. Dross noticed what was happening, could see understanding in his old eyes. "Perhaps we should move to the negotiation chamber," Dross said. He did not mention the guards. He did not explain what was happening. He simply made a choice to leave. "The transition will be good for all of us. We can speak in private, yes." "Yes," agreed. She was glad to leave this strange situation. As they walked through the palace halls, Dross and Commander moved together. Behind them came the guards, could hear them struggling. One guard made a strange sound. Another nearly fell but caught himself against the wall. Never looked back. His back was straight, his head was high. He showed no sign that anything was wrong. The negotiation chamber was a smaller room with a long table of dark wood. Maps hung on the walls showing both and Earth. Windows looked out onto the gardens of the palace where strange purple flowers grew tall and wild. As soon as the door closed, Prime Minister Dross turned too. "I must explain something," Dross said. "You must understand what is happening." "What is wrong with your guards?" asked. She was no longer trying to hide her confusion or her fear. "Did I do something? Am I causing this?" "Not in the way you think," Dross said carefully. "But yes, it is something about you, about your presence here. We must find out what is happening." Stood by the window, still saying nothing, still showing no emotion, but noticed that his 4 eyes kept turning toward her. She noticed that his breath was steady and calm while his men suffered outside. She noticed that he was different from all the others. "Commander," said, looking at him, "you know what this is, don't you?" For a long moment said nothing. Then he turned from the window to face her. When he spoke, his voice was deep and quiet. "Yes," said, "I know what is happening, and I know why it is not happening to me. But before I explain, you must understand this, Ambassador. What is happening between our species is not accidental, it is not random, and it is going to change everything." His heart beat faster. She knew that Commander was telling her something important. She knew that her journey on was going to be much more difficult than she had planned. Outside the chamber, the guards still struggled with something they did not understand. They felt pain and hunger and confusion. They felt a pull they could not explain. And they did not know why their commander was not affected at all. Doctor had not slept in 36 hours. His eyes were red and tired. His hair stood up in wild directions. His hands shook slightly as he held his tablet, looking at the data streams that filled the screen. In the small research lab inside the human embassy, had been working non-stop, analyzing blood samples and DNA sequences. Walked in and found him staring at a holographic image of 2 DNA helixes, one human and one, twisted together in the air above his desk. "You found something," said. It was not a question. She could tell by the way he moved, by the wild look in his eyes. "I found something extraordinary," said. His voice was rough from lack of sleep. He stood up too fast and almost fell over. He caught himself against the desk. "Sit down, you need to hear this." Sat in the chair next to him. She watched the DNA helixes spinning slowly in the air. "Your pheromones," began. "Do you know what pheromones are?" "Chemical signals," said. "Humans make them too, but very weak. We use them mostly without thinking about it. Why?" "Because pheromone receptors are not like human ones," explained. He moved his hand and the holographic display changed, showing complex molecular structures. "Respond to pheromones much more strongly than we do. It is a fundamental part of how they communicate. But here is the strange part. Your human pheromones are triggering responses in their brains that should not be possible." Pulled up more data. Charts and graphs filled the air. Numbers that meant little to flashed across the screen. "I took samples from the guards who were affected," continued. "All of them. I ran their DNA. I checked their brain chemistry. I compared their reactions to your pheromones against known responses to normal pheromones. The results make no sense." "Tell me clearly," said. "I do not understand all these numbers." Took a deep breath. He looked at with serious eyes. "Humans and are not the same species," said slowly. "We evolved on different planets. We have different biologies. We should not affect each other this way. But your pheromones are triggering deep neural pathways in guards, pathways that create attraction and need." "Why?" asked. "What could cause that?" "That is the incredible part," said. He made the holographic display show the human DNA and the DNA side by side. Look at these genetic markers. Look at the similarities here and here and here. These sections of DNA are almost identical, too identical to be accidental. Enlarge the display. The two DNA strands seem to match up in many places, like pieces of a puzzle fitting together. I ran the analysis 5 times, said. I checked it again and again. The results are always the same. Humans and share genetic material. We have common ancestors, not recent ancestors. This goes back millions of years, but it is real. Felt the room spin slightly. She held onto the arms of her chair. That is not possible, she said. We evolved on different planets. We only discovered each other 50 years ago. I know, said, but the science is clear. 7 million years ago, maybe longer ago, humanity and were connected somehow. Perhaps a meteor brought life from one world to another. Perhaps ancient space travelers seeded both planets. Perhaps there is an explanation we have not thought of yet, but the genetic connection is real. Pulled up another file. This one showed the affected guards. Their DNA sequences were displayed, and in each one the same genetic markers appeared. But here is the key part, said, pointing at the screen. Not all are affected equally. The guards who were affected most strongly have these markers here. The ones who were less affected have different markers. And then there is Commander. The holographic display shifted to show's DNA sequence. Leaned forward to look more closely. His genetic sequence is different, explained. He has a mutation in his brain. It is in the receptor region, the place where pheromones would normally trigger a response. His mutation makes him immune. His brain simply does not respond to your pheromones the way others do. Is the mutation rare? Asked. Very rare, said. Based on what I learned from the doctors, maybe 1 in 50,000 have this mutation. It is so rare that most do not even know it exists. Many with this mutation have been ashamed of it, thinking it made them weak or broken. Thought about standing alone in that hall, unmoved while his men suffered. She thought about his cold eyes and his quiet power. So is immune because of genetics, said. That is why he could stand near me without losing control. Yes, said, but there is more. The mutation itself is interesting. It is not a random change in his DNA. The markers show that this mutation has been in his family for a very long time, maybe 200 years, maybe longer. Stood up and walked around the lab. She needed to move. She needed to think. If humans and share genetic material from 7 million years ago, how is there a mutation that is only 200 years old? She asked. Looked uncomfortable. He rubbed his face with both hands. That is the part I cannot explain, he said. The mutation should have appeared naturally based on the genetic connection, but the pattern of it, the way it is distributed in its family line, suggests something else. What's demanded? It suggests that at some point in the last 200 years, a human ancestor was in its family, said quietly. It suggests that there was interbreeding between humans and in recent history. The words hung in the air between them. Tried to imagine it. A human and a together. A child born from both worlds. That is impossible, said. We did not meet until 50 years ago. We did not know about them, corrected. But that does not mean they did not know about us, or that there was no contact in the past. The genetic evidence is clear, has human ancestry. Someone in his family bloodline was human. Over the next several days, found herself working closely with Commander. Prime Minister Dross assigned him to help with negotiations and logistics. This made sense, Dross said, because could stay calm around while other guards could not. But now that knew about the genetics, she understood there was a deeper truth. Was not just immune. He was connected to humanity through his own blood. During a break in negotiations, asked him to walk with her in the palace gardens. Purple flowers towered around them, and strange blue birds sang in the trees. My scientist found something interesting about your genetics, said carefully. Walked without looking at her. His pace was steady. I know he did, said. The doctors would have told me. I know about the mutation. I know what it means. Do you know what it really means? Pressed. Do you know why you have it? Stopped walking. He turned to face. His 4 eyes looked directly into her 2 eyes. My grandfather was human, said simply. He was a space explorer from Earth. His ship crashed on 200 years ago. My family saved him. He lived with us. He had a child with my great-grandmother. That child had his genes, including the mutation that made him immune to pheromones. That mutation passed down through my family to me. His breath stopped. 200 years, long before humanity knew existed, long before the first official contact. How did your family keep this secret? She asked. It is shameful to be part human, said quietly. We are taught that we are pure, that we are superior to other species. A family with human blood would be disgraced. My family kept the secret because they had to, but they also kept the truth alive. They told us stories about the human who came from the stars. They told us he was brave and kind. They told us that humans were not the inferior creatures we were taught to believe. Looked away from her, out toward the distant mountains of. So when I saw you walk into that hall, continued, and I felt nothing while my brothers felt everything, I understood why. I felt your pheromones in my mind, not with hunger but with recognition. Some part of my human blood knows your human scent. It recognizes something familiar, something like home. Had no words. She and stood together in the gardens while the purple flowers swayed in the wind, and everything she thought she knew about the history of 2 worlds began to change. Could not sleep. She walked through the palace corridors at midnight, unable to rest. The revelation about family, about human and ancestry mixing 200 years ago, filled her mind. So much of what she thought was real turned out to be false. She was walking past a conference chamber when she heard voices. 2 deep voices, angry and sharp. She knew she should not stop and listen, but something made her pause. Something made her press herself against the wall beside the door. The mutations must be purged from our bloodline, a voice said. It was hard and cold like ice. If humans can intermingle, if their genetics can blend with ours, we lose everything. We lose our purity as a species. We become infected with their weakness. Recognize this voice. It belonged to General Vex, the head of the military council. He was a powerful man with influence over the army and the government. But the Prime Minister seeks peace, another voice replied. This was Minister Dross. His voice sounded uncertain, like he was being pressured. The trade agreements are good for our people. The technology exchange will help us. The Prime Minister is weak. Vex spat the words like poison. He sees only profit and prosperity. He does not see the danger. He does not see that humanity is a threat to everything we are. His heart beat very fast. She tried to breathe quietly. I have been working carefully, Vex continued. For months I have been moving pieces into place. The guards who are most affected by the humans' pheromones, the ones who lose control most easily, I have positioned them exactly where they need to be. When the negotiations reach their final stage, when the human ambassador is most comfortable and least aware, they will lose control. They will attack her. They will become violent and dangerous. Felt cold. When they do, the human delegation will be forced to fight back, Vex said. People will die. The humans will be blamed for the violence. The treaty will collapse. Our people will demand war, not peace. And I will lead our military to destroy any human threat to our world. But that is wrong, Dross said. His voice shook. That is evil, Vex. You would sacrifice your own soldiers to start a war. Soldiers exist to serve their world, Vex said coldly. If some must die to protect our species from contamination, that is the cost of survival. Could not hear any more. She moved away from the door as quietly as she could. Her legs felt weak. Her mind raced with fear and anger. She ran back to her quarters and called an emergency meeting. Lieutenant Gray, the head of human security, arrived first. Then Doctor. They sat in a sealed room, which had been checked many times for listening devices. General Vex is using the pheromone situation as a weapon, said. She explained everything she had heard. She told them about the plan to position vulnerable guards near her, to let them lose control, to create violence and fear. We need to tell Prime Minister Dross immediately, said. She was a soldier and she thought like a soldier. We need protection. We need to leave this planet. No, said. If we leave, Vex wins. The treaty fails, Earth and become enemies. There will be war. If we stay, we might die, pointed out. Then we need to expose Vex before he can act, said. We need to tell the truth to someone who can stop him. We need someone to trust. And looked at each other. Said, he is the only military officer we know, the only one we can trust. Finding alone was difficult. He was always busy with his duties, always surrounded by other guards, but finally caught him in the royal garden at dusk. The twin suns were setting, painting the sky red and orange and deep purple. I need to tell you something, said. She had no time for careful words. She explained what she had heard. She told him about Vex's plan to use the vulnerable guards as weapons. She told him about the conspiracy to destroy the peace treaty. Listened without moving. His scaled face remained hard and cold, but when finished speaking she saw something shift in his 4 eyes. She saw anger there, real and deep. General Vex, said slowly, I have suspected him for months. He has been consolidating power among the younger officers. He has been spreading fear about human contamination. But I did not know he would go this far. I did not know he would sacrifice his own soldiers. Can you stop him? Asked. I can bring evidence to the Prime Minister, said. But it will be dangerous. When I do this, I will be exposing military secrets. I will be disloyal to the military council in the eyes of many officers. The people will need to understand why. They will need to trust that I am telling the truth. They will need to believe that the military is not their enemy. Looked at with steady eyes. You must help me, he said. If I bring only military evidence, the people will question it. If you speak, if you tell them why you care about safety, maybe they will listen. Will you do this? Yes, said without hesitation. I will do this. That night went to Prime Minister Dross's private chambers. He brought files and documents. He showed evidence of unauthorized guard movements. He revealed communications between General Vex and the affected guards, messages encouraging them to lose control, to become violent. The evidence was clear and devastating. Vex had written in his own words about the plan to sabotage the peace treaty. He had documented his strategy to create fear and violence. Prime Minister Dross's face became very angry. He called an emergency meeting of the government council. In front of everyone, presented the evidence. In front of everyone, the conspiracy was revealed. But it was testimony that changed everything. She stood before the government and did not speak with fear. She spoke with strength. General Vex believes that I am a threat to your people, said clearly. He believes that contact with humans will destroy culture and purity. I understand this fear. Fear is something that all intelligent species feel when they face the unknown. She paused and looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each council member. But General Vex is wrong, continued. Fear does not have to control us. We do not have to let it make our decisions. Fear makes us dangerous, yes. Fear makes us do terrible things. But understanding, dialogue, respect for differences, these things make us strong. These things give us power. She pointed toward Commander. Commander showed me more courage in one moment than General Vex has shown in his entire life, said. Chose to tell the truth even though it would harm his own career. He chose to protect his people from a conspiracy. That is what real strength is. That is what honor means. The council voted to remove General Vex from his position. Several military were arrested. An investigation began. The government issued a formal apology to the human delegation. Prime Minister Dross himself came to quarters to apologize. "You have saved us from tearing ourselves apart," Dross said. His old eyes held sadness and relief mixed together. "Commander saved everyone," said. "I only told the truth." But as she watched Dross leave, knew that something fundamental had changed. The conspiracy had exposed something real about fears and human possibilities. Now the treaty could move forward, but it would be different. It would be built on truth instead of pretense. And she knew that her connection to would be part of that new truth. His choice to protect her, his choice to expose evil, his choice to stand with humanity even when it cost him, had changed the course of history. With the conspiracy exposed and the threat eliminated, the peace negotiations moved forward very quickly. Prime Minister Dross was eager to complete the treaty. The government wanted to show the universe that they were a stable, peaceful people. They wanted to distance themselves from the scandal of General Vex and his conspirators. The treaty negotiations became less stressful and more focused on details. Trade agreements were finalized. Technology exchange programs were organized. Military non-aggression pacts were written and debated. Humans sat together in conference rooms and worked out terms of cooperation. But while the negotiations moved forward, something else was happening. Something between and Commander that had nothing to do with politics or treaties. Was offered a promotion. The military wanted to reward him for his loyalty and his bravery. They offered him command of the entire planet's defense forces. It was the highest position a soldier could achieve. It was a great honor. Refused. Prime Minister Dross was shocked. He asked why he would turn down such an important position. "Because I have other work to do," said simply. He did not explain further. Understood. In quiet moments she found themselves together, sometimes in the palace gardens, sometimes in empty corridors, sometimes just sitting in silence while the work of building peace happened around them. One evening, they stood on the palace observation deck. The deck was high above the city and from there they could see for hundreds of miles. The landscape was strange too, with purple mountains in the distance and blue sky that seemed too bright. The two moons were rising. They moved slowly across the sky, and their light was different from Earth's single moon. Everything looked alien and beautiful at the same time. "I have been thinking about why I refused the promotion," said. He stood with his scaled hands resting on the railing of the observation deck. "Why did you refuse?" asked. "Because I wanted to be here," said simply. "Because I wanted to be near you. Because I am tired of pretending that this is only politics and negotiations." Felt her heart beat faster. She did not know what to say. "You have changed me," continued. "The moment you walked into that hall and I felt nothing, I knew I was different. Not just because of the mutation, not just because of my genetic makeup. I was different because I recognized something in you, something true, something I have been searching for my entire life." Turned to face her. His 4 eyes looked at her with intensity. "In culture, we do not speak of emotions the way humans do," said. "We show them through action and dedication. I choose to refuse power and position because I choose you. I choose connection with you instead." Wanted to reach out and touch him, but she was afraid. His scales looked hard and cold, but she had learned that they were warm. His claws were sharp, but she knew he would never use them to hurt her. "Why are you immune to my pheromones?" she asked suddenly. "The real reason, not just the mutation. There must be more." Looked out at the moons rising higher in the sky. "My grandfather was human," said, the words coming slowly. "His name was James. He was a space explorer 200 years ago. His ship broke apart when it crashed on. He was the only survivor. My ancestors found him in the wreckage. They could have killed him. They could have imprisoned him. Instead, they helped him. They let him live among us." "What happened to him?" asked. "He fell in love with my great-grandmother," said. "Her name was Sora. She was beautiful and brave and kind. She saw James not as a human invader but as a person. They had a child together. That child was part human. That child carried James's genes. Touched his chest over his heart. I carry his genes, said. I carry the DNA of a human explorer who came from the stars 200 years ago. When I stand near you, when I breathe the air that carries your pheromones, something in me recognizes you. Some part of my blood knows you. Some part of my very being remembers that I am connected to your people. You are part human, said quietly. I am, confirmed. And I have always been told this was shameful. My family kept it secret. They were afraid that if anyone knew, we would be disgraced. But I have never believed it was shameful. I have always believed it was a gift. It was a connection to something greater than pride and isolation. Reached out and took's hand. His scales were warm, just as she had imagined. His grip was strong and gentle at the same time. I am not ashamed, said. I am honored. In the weeks that followed and spent every moment they could together, they walked through the palace gardens. They attended dinners and celebrations together. They talked for hours about their worlds, their cultures, their dreams. The people began to notice. Gossip spread through the city. A human ambassador was developing a romantic connection with a military commander. Some people were shocked. Some people were angry, but many people were curious. It was during a formal state dinner, held to celebrate the near completion of the treaty, that danger struck. The dinner was held in the grandest hall of the palace. Hundreds of leaders and human delegates sat at long tables. Music played. Food was served. Stood to give a speech about cooperation and friendship. She was standing at the front of the hall, speaking to the gathered crowd, when a side door burst open. A guard emerged from the service corridor. But this guard was not supposed to be there. This guard held a weapon that glowed with heat and energy. The guard raised the weapon and pointed it directly at. Everything happened very fast. Without thinking, without hesitation, Commander moved. He ran across the hall faster than anyone could react. He put his body between and the weapon. His military training took over completely. The guard fired. The weapon released a burst of thermal energy, heat so intense it could burn through metal. The blast came toward them. But it already signaled to loyal guards. They tackled the assassin before he could fire again. The weapon fell from his hands and discharged harmlessly into the ceiling. Was hit by the blast. The heat seared across his upper arm, burning his scales and the tissue beneath. He fell to the ground. Knelt beside him immediately. Blood was coming from his wound. His arm was burned badly, but he looked up at her with clear eyes and he smiled. I told you, said quietly so only she could hear, some reactions cannot be chemical or controlled by pheromones. This is choice. This is what it means to choose someone. The assassin was captured. The investigation began immediately. It was discovered that a member of Prime Minister Dross's inner circle had hired the killer. This general, who still supported Vex's ideas, believed the treaty was a betrayal of values. He had tried to kill to destroy the peace agreement. But he had failed, and in failing, he had shown everyone watching that Commander would sacrifice everything for. That kind of devotion, that kind of choice, could not be explained by chemistry or genetics. It was something deeper. It was something that crossed the boundary between two worlds. The treaty signing took place in the largest public amphitheater on. Thousands of citizens filled the seats and the standing areas. The ceremony was broadcast across multiple worlds and through space networks that connected hundreds of planets. People from dozens of different species watched as humanity and came together for the first time in an official, permanent peace agreement. Prime Minister Dross stood on the central platform. Beside him stood the human ambassador, and on her other side stood Commander, his arm wrapped in white healing bandages. His scales still showed the marks of the thermal burn, but he stood with absolute dignity and strength. The treaty was read aloud. Trade agreements were announced. Technology exchange programs were described. Military non-aggression pacts were confirmed. The gathering of thousands erupted in cheers. When it came time to sign the document, signed on behalf of humanity, Prime Minister Dross signed on behalf of. And then, in a move that shocked many observers, Commander was asked to sign as well. His signature was added as a representative of military command, confirming that the army would honor this peace. After the formal ceremony stepped forward to speak, the crowd became quiet and attentive. "I came to as an ambassador," said. Her voice was clear and strong, carried through speakers across the entire amphitheater. "I came to negotiate a treaty. I came to build a bridge between two worlds. But something happened here that was more important than politics or trade or military agreements." Paused and looked toward. "I came to understand something fundamental," continued. "On my world, we have an ancient saying. We say that the opposite of fear is not the absence of fear, but connection. Throughout history, humans have been afraid of things we did not understand. We have built walls. We have created enemies out of strangers. But we have also learned that when we truly connect with people different from ourselves, fear disappears." She turned to address the audience directly, looking out at the faces watching her. "The people and the human people are connected," said. "We are connected through genetics and history and evolution. But more than that, we are connected through choice. Through the choices we make to understand each other. Through the choices we make to trust. Through the choices we make to cooperate instead of attack." Gestured to. "Commander showed the world what true courage is," said. "He chose to expose the truth even when it harmed his own career. He chose to protect peace even when it meant going against military tradition. He chose to stand with humanity even though his own culture taught him that humans were inferior." The crowd began to cheer again. "I am not leaving as just an ambassador," announced. "I am staying. I am accepting a new position as the permanent human envoy to this world, and Commander will accept a position as the envoy to Earth. Together, we will continue to build the bridges between our peoples. Together, we will show the universe that cooperation is possible." The cheers became louder. Some who had opposed the treaty initially now looked thoughtful, watching stand beside. Some humans in the delegation looked amazed that the ambassador would give up her position in the government to stay on, but knew what she was doing. She had talked about this decision for weeks. The treaty was just the beginning. The real work would be harder. It would require someone who could speak for both worlds. It would require someone who understood both cultures. In the months that followed and traveled between worlds constantly, they visited universities on both Earth and. They gave speeches and lectures about the shared genetic heritage of their species. They worked with scientists and historians to document the truth about human and history. Doctors' research into the genetic connection became the foundation for an entirely new field of study. Teams of human and scientists established joint research programs. Universities on both worlds began offering courses in cross-species biology and history. The discovery of grandfather, James, and his relationship with Sarah opened up historical investigations. Records were found. Old journals were translated. The story of a human explorer falling in love with a warrior 200 years ago became known to the public. Instead of being shameful, it became a symbol of hope. His family decided to reveal their secret publicly. They had nothing to fear anymore. The people were ready to accept them. The prejudice against human ancestry was fading, replaced by curiosity and wonder. 6 months after the treaty signing, and returned to for a special celebration. They had made an important decision, and they wanted to announce it in the place where their story began. On a quiet evening in the royal gardens, where purple flowers grew tall and strange blue birds sang, asked a question in the traditional way. He did not use words. Instead, he presented her with a gift. It was a living crystal, rare and precious beyond measure. The crystal was small enough to fit in her hand, but it would grow and transform over centuries. It was a symbol of commitment that transcended time and species. It meant forever. accepted the crystal, with tears streaming down her face. Then she asked a question in the human tradition. She used words that carried all the weight of her heart. "Will you marry me?" she asked. "Will you commit your life to building a bridge between our worlds?" Took her hands, careful of the crystal she held, and answered in perfect human words that he had learned from her. "Yes," he said, "I will." They were married 3 months later. The ceremony combined human traditions and traditions. They exchanged rings as humans did, but also presented with his family's ancestral cloak, which had been passed down from his great-grandmother Sara. Wore her human white dress, but she also wore symbols of honor on her shoulders. The ceremony was witnessed by thousands of people from both worlds. Prime Minister Dross gave a blessing. Doctor stood as closest friend and advisor. His family stood proudly, no longer hiding their human heritage. As the two sons of Set on the day of their marriage and stood together on the observation deck of the palace, the stars were beginning to appear in the sky. Somewhere among those stars was Earth, the world where was born. Somewhere in the opposite direction was the world where was born. Now they were home to both worlds. "I was afraid when I first arrived on," said quietly. "I was afraid of the unknown. I was afraid that humans and could never understand each other." "And now?" asked. "Now I know that fear only has power if we let it," said. "Now I know that understanding comes from connection, and I know that two worlds can become one family through choice and love." Years passed, and continued their work as cultural ambassadors. They traveled through the galaxy, telling their story to hundreds of worlds. They showed that peaceful coexistence was possible. They demonstrated that different species could not only live together but could build something beautiful together. The conspiracy that had tried to destroy peace was eventually fully uncovered. General Vex and the other conspirators faced trial in a joint human and court. It was the first court of its kind, bringing justice from both worlds together. The trials showed the universe that both species were committed to law and order and shared values. But the most important legacy of and was not political or military or scientific. It was personal. They showed that love could cross the boundaries between worlds. They showed that choice was stronger than chemistry. They showed that understanding was more powerful than fear. Historians would later mark the treaty signing as the moment when humanity finally became secure in the galactic community. But those who knew the real story understood the truth. The real turning point had come in a royal court, when a human woman walked through a line of alien guards, and one commander chose to stand with her instead of against her. That single choice, repeated by millions of humans and in the years that followed, changed everything. It changed history. It changed the future of two worlds. And it proved that the greatest power in the universe is not strength or intelligence or technology, but the simple choice to understand someone different from yourself and to build connection instead of walls. The stars shone above them as and looked out at the universe they were helping to unite. Behind them, worlds that had been strangers were becoming friends. Species that had feared each other were learning to cooperate. And it had all started with one ambassador, one commander, and the choice to see each other not as enemies or aliens, but as people worthy of love and respect.